Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing fantastic. So, I heard some young men say sex robots will liberate men from the P word addictions and artificial wombs. P word, you know what I mean by the female organ. So, this was kind of shocking because it showed how hurt the young men are by modern Western women, to the point that they feel that something artificial would be a form of liberation. And what I found even more odd was that the artificial wombs has now become a talking point of liberation for both men and women, and that both men and women in modernity have decided, some of them at least, that sex robots are the way of the future. What I find kind of disturbing about this is the fact that these young people, these men, have no hope in the love and endearment and nourishment that a woman provides. I don't blame the young men, rather, I blame the modern feminist sexual liberation movement, where women have turned into base, animalistic hedonites, to the point where men have become terrified and horrified of being with such a woman. And religion, specifically Islam, calls women to be better, tells us to keep our beauty for our spouse, to be proud of submitting to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to obey Him in what He decrees for us. That we are to guard our chastity, to not fornicate, to not be in brothel culture, not to use intoxicants, which really make you more susceptible and accepting of lewd acts. So much wisdom is found in the Sharia for women, but it doesn't get the good justice it deserves because our secular, liberal, atheistic society in this modern, progressive age makes more money when you sin as a woman than when you stay home, take care of your children, breastfeed, and love your natural skin, love your natural hair color. They're always trying to peel you apart, dismantle you, and really get you to alienate yourself psychologically from your spouse, from yourself, from your children, and to chase objects and materialism, and to objectify yourself. They make money off of everything. Everything has a price now. You abort your kid, lab coats, they're gonna make money. The doctors, they make money. Everybody's making money off of the bad choices of women, right? And men. But that money incentivization has been programmed into us through commercials, advertisements, and the marketing industries, to the point where women have mimicked it in such a mass scale that men have now, young men that is, have looked at women in America with abject horror. And this is why I highly encourage many Americans, American Muslims specifically, to really study our faith, to really learn, try to apply, cut back on work, and really focus on how we can get better, how we can apply what we've learned, in getting around the right kind of people and setting an example incrementally, piece by piece, as we improve ourselves. Because if we do this, if we through leading by example and setting the example and spreading it and so on and so forth, if we do this, we can show the feminists that their polluted, inverted, subversive ideology is not needed for us. Because they're coming for all pious women. You can see the destruction if you trace American media from the 17th century, how women used to dress until now, and what avenues the destruction of the Christian psychology came through. It was through cartoons, specifically Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney #1, and through MTV, BET, and different musicians. So it was celebrityism and the music industry, along with degenerate art and degenerate Hollywood movies, that attacked the consciousness of Christian women so heavily that now they openly, some of them, not all of them, openly break the rules of their faith and don't even bother to study and think wearing a cross and knowing a couple things of Psalms and the Gospels is enough, right? And they pride themselves, some of them, not all of them, on being as liberal as possible and being apologetic for the Old Testament, right? So, tracing back how they did it to the Christians and how more tense it is now, we can therefore try to strategize and create solutions and problem solve for the new ways in which they'll do it to Muslim women. And so, if we focus on this as women, I believe, through the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we can stop as much as possible the replacement of us women with sex robots. I mentioned with my interview that I did with Brother Gabriel Rahmani quite some time ago, how even I, when I was more atheistic, thought a robot would be a sufficient replacement for a man, and I could just get a sperm donor. And it took me a while, by the permission of Allah, to really realize how that's not healthy. That isn't wise. And to have something so cold and robotic, something where I'm in full control, it showed me how there is an imbalance in the duties of women and the duties of men, and that me wanting a robot was me wanting full control. And that's not what a relationship is about. Relationship is compromise, working on issues, knowing when to walk away, setting boundaries, having standards, right? It's so much more. It's not just my way or the highway. And sometimes you have to submit, and sometimes you have to stay firm for what you believe is totally wrong, and sometimes you just have to agree to disagree, right? And sometimes you have to work on a specific issue with your mate over the course of some time. Sometimes they have to adjust, and you have to adjust to the standards both of you want, right? And I realized that robots are a way to get us to be mini tyrants, to be in full control, which just alienates us more and makes it harder for us to find someone who we can click and mesh with, because we have been the dictator in our own ego for so long that we feel we can never be wrong and we are always right. And we then start to lose mercy, and we then start to lose our humbleness and become haughty and utterly satanic. And I also feel that when the men say, the young men, that is, the blank P word addictions, addiction is a negative word. And I feel like this is where polygamy comes in. Because if they feel they have an addiction to women, right? They feel like they chase it so much. They want to have their woman. And if she doesn't give it, and they feel angry at her. Like, you don't give it to me, you don't satisfy me enough, you're always tired. And some women, they go through their cycles and they're tired and they don't want to. So this is where the wisdom, I think, of polygamy comes in, is because you have your second wife who will be on a different cycle than your first or your third or your fourth, and how a man can satisfy his needs within a legal, lawful marriage where he provides for these women, and all of them are pious or trying to be pious and have produced children and have accepted and are submissive to their gender role and enjoy having children and enjoy being stay-at-home moms. They are ideal role models for us women, and by those women existing who accept practice polygamy, men can get out their urges better and not feel resentful for when one cold wife turns them away, and then now they have to go and watch videos and use their hand and they become resentful towards their spouse. Right? Because sometimes people get married and they are not the same hot blood, as we say. And some women, they're a bit more rigid, and others are a bit more nymphomaniac, and the man doesn't have stamina or the body shape and the testosterone to provide for her, and she can become resentful. So I've contended in the past that a man having multiple wives helps keep him in shape and keeps his masculinity in check, and will also help reinvigorate the intimacy life of all involved. And so it becomes a sort of outlet for the healthy energy while cultivating a fortified masculine man at the same time. That's why I see so much wisdom in allowing men to have polygamy, because then the men are not held hostage if they married a cold woman. And since we know divorce is not something that we should promote or endorse, when it's needless, that is, polygamy is a good way for a man with a healthy sex drive to not be held hostage by a cold woman who uses sex as a weapon to manipulate him to get what she wants. Right? And instead of her negative behavior, she will know she has to be better, because when there's other chickens in the hen house, everyone falls into their pecking order. And so we women must take this sex robot revolution quite seriously, and we must be very weary of allowing our biology to be taken over by AI, artificial intelligence. To cut off that bond that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is to take away our gift. We women have the wonderful capacity, true authentic biological women that is, to birth beautiful healthy children, and even if the child is sickly and survives, it's a testament to the power and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even if unfortunately, God forbid, that you lose a child, you still learn from that experience, and that little one, inshallah, might be waiting for you in paradise. I'm not sure where those little ones go, but that's up to the scholars to decide. But still, there is a happy ending that comes from it in the next life. So the pain and struggle you get helps you to press onward, and then with your next pregnancy and the child survives, inshallah, you will be even more grateful. There's always a cycle to it, and there's always reason behind it, regardless of if we see it or not. So this artificial womb will hurt men in terms of not seeing their wife's belly grow. When a man kisses a woman's stomach, or he puts his hand upon her belly and feels his seed grow strong, when he sees his wife give birth, he sees the head come out of the body of his wife, that is something that changes a man. Having a machine do it and grow it like it's some alien, it's not the same. And is very creepy and doesn't give the child privacy, I'd argue. In the womb, they're concealed and have privacy. They're in their nude. They're growing through their stages. You don't see them in the awkward stages. You see them in their cute, chubby, fully formed stages, to put them in glass and look at them as they grow may at first seem scientific and nerdy, but there is something about, how would you put it? It's like you don't give them their privacy, and you show their, I don't want to say ugliness, but you show them when they're not fully formed. And I feel like that is violation of that little one's privacy. And to trust workers to grow your baby effectively is disgusting and wrong. And then if you have some type of machine at home that you just plug in the wall, you go drink cocktails and, relax while a machine does all the work, have you really earned your baby? At that point, I wouldn't be surprised if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished women with infertility and reduced the human population so as they could learn a lesson. And if the power goes out, do you lose your baby? I mean, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But it is indeed quite shocking to see how some of the younger men are now openly declaring that sex robots and artificial wombs will liberate the need and dependency and addiction they have of and to women. This is quite common, and with these futuristic nerds, especially with the coders, they have money. Some of them have Asperger's. They're kind of a little bit introverted. They're socially awkward with women, and they want to create their ideal spouse. This is quite troubling. Now, we know people in rural areas will indeed enjoy their women regularly, right? But the temptation, the fitna, for women especially, if there's a realistic male robot, they can be designed any way the woman wants to look, and the man has a woman who can be designed any way he wants. Oh boy, that is a huge test and trial. And women, by being good wives, earn paradise. One must reason with themselves and ask, why be a wife if you're just going to have a machine? And would that fornication with that robot be a sin? Because you're not married to it. And how foolish would it be to marry a robot? So there's a lot that comes into play here. But either way you square it, for young men to be openly declaring this as a form of a revolution and liberation really is shocking, and we have to do much work. We have to take on these feminists, these hedonists, these brothel keepers, these pimpstresses. We must uphold the institution of women. We must change ourselves to become better and better every day. And we must be able to reason and explain ourselves and put our best foot forward in this affair, lest our sons turn to a robot and our daughters never reproduce. We have to really come up with solutions and strategies to keep hope alive within the Muslim youth when they are faced with such unique and dystopian challenges that will rock their iman and tempt them in ways that are almost unpredictable and unmanageable sometimes. Let me know what you think, what ideas you have, and I hope you're having a good night.